welcome everybody to today's session. Today is not only going to be a pre-week analysis video, but it's also going to be an educational video that will take you to how to exactly do pre-week analysis so you guys can succeed with that as well. This is going to be a series that we're going to be implementing. I know last week we did do a pre-week analysis, but this is going to be our true episode 1 of our weekly pre-week analysis, which we'll be doing every Sunday within V2 Trading, all for completely free. Now, I also promised you guys that I would make an educational video, and that's why I'm merging the educational video with this pre-week analysis, and the educational video will essentially show you how exactly to do pre-week analysis so that you can essentially know what to look for before the week even starts to set yourself up for success. And let's dive straight into that. We do this through a 5-step process. That 5-step process is right there. The first step, before even hopping on the charts, is to look at financial news. And to do this, you can utilize a variety of different great resources, including forexfactory.com or financialjuice.com. They both work great, and I use both of them in unison in order to see my critical news events, to understand when I should and when I should not trade or take a 5-minute interval break, which will be heavily impactful during this week especially. So let's take a look at Monday, right? Monday, we have no news between 8:30 and 10:30, and that's Central Time for me. If you're on the East Coast, it would be 9:30 to 11:30, and then if you're on the West Coast, it would be from 6:30 to 8:30, I believe. But this will all adjust to your personal timing. Just know when market open is and know what times you trade in and when exactly your market session is. And you have to understand when there are key financial news releases, because you don't want to trade when news gets released, because it can be associated with very unpredictable movement of the price. So on Monday, there's not really anything disturbing us. On Tuesday, we do have Canadian CPI at 7:30, and that's okay because it's Canadian, right? The US stock markets won't move crazily when Canadian CPI gets released, but again, it's an hour before market open, so we typically don't have to worry about Canadian CPI. Additionally, we don't have any medium to high impact news during our time period of trade, so Tuesday is a pretty chill day as well. Now on Wednesday, there is news at 8:45, which is high impact, but it's Canadian again. And we have high impact news at 9:30, and these high impact news are categorized by color on Forex Factory, right? Red is the most high impact, orange is medium impact, and yellow is low impact. You can typically trade when yellow or low impact news gets released, but when high impact news or red folder news gets released, you want to take a 5-minute interval break before and after. And what I mean by this is, for example, if news is getting released at 8:45 a.m., you want to be flat from 8:40 to 8:50, and then you can trade after or before, because you want to let the market settle down or be prepared for news to get released. And that's the significance of the 5-minute interval rule that I honestly believe many traders should establish within their trading guidelines and rules and their system. But on Wednesday, we do have to be careful for 8:45, establish the 5-minute interval there, and at 9:30. Regarding the other time periods then, not much to look for. On Thursday, we do not have much at all. So Thursday, we don't have to worry about it. And on Friday, it's Easter. So you can take the day off on Easter because Easter is a US bank holiday. Now, looking on Financial Juice as well, everything is essentially the same. But on the 16th, Mr. Powell does speak. And when he speaks, you want to stay flat during that entire period of time. So if you're trading the PM session on the 16th, I would definitely be careful because Powell will be speaking. And that's it for the first step. I did it very slow so you guys understand the step-by-step process of understanding the financial dues and essentially doing a bit of fundamental analysis before you hop onto the charts. Now, if there is high impact news in the US like CPI, PPI, NFP, FOMC, you want to keep up to date with all those releases to see if they're positive and negative and to see the movement which they create on the charts as well. Because sometimes the liquidity which they create and put upon the market is more significant than any other liquidity level, and because of that, you can use it as targets, resistance, support, whatever you can to integrate it with your personal strategy. So now to move on from that, let's talk about the other 4 essential steps, right? Number 2 is to look at higher time frames on the charts. So now is where we're actually going to go onto the charts and do some quick analysis. Additionally, once we do that, we're going to integrate our fundamental analysis to the higher time frame analysis to understand what is going on. And this can typically be looked over in many occasions because there's not significant news, but now is a bigger time than ever to put a focus on this fundamental integration. Then after that, we're going to go down and go to medium and low time frame analysis. This is somewhat of a top-down analysis, you could say. And then at the end, we're going to create our game plan or predictions. And we're going to do this for NQ, ES, and VIX. And if you really want, you can do it for QQQ, SPY, and much more. It depends on what you're trading, but I find that charting out your main commodities or indices, whichever you trade, alongside a different analysis portion, you can definitely find success. But these are all additional, which can definitely help you as well. So let's start with step 2 on ES, starting from the daily or even weekly chart if it's been a while. So what do we see? You want to mark out your levels or do what you typically do for your pre-day analysis on a day-to-day basis, and that's going to differ from strategy to strategy. I'm not saying one strategy is the best over another. I'm saying that you have to do what you have to do to understand what the market may do with your personal strategy, right? My strategy utilizes different liquidity concepts in integration with volume, order flow, and momentum, and we capitalize mainly on retracements or certain reversals given order flow data, but there's a lot that goes into every strategy and I'm very aware of that. So what you want to be doing is essentially you want to be charting out how you do normally before you get into a typical trading day and then move on from there, right? So say I just have done that really quick on the daily time frame, right? Move this up here. Okay. So for my personal analysis, for those in V2 trading that do use some strategy similar to this, we do know that these levels down here are very key. So you may see something go on there as well. And let's move it in the past to see where another key level is. And we do have another key level up near these liquidity levels. So our main liquidity levels are these highs, or this overall area, especially this gap fill area, alongside this liquidity level down here as well. These are the levels where buyers and sellers are at most agreement, causing the highest volume at those levels, which does result in it being a key area for us. I don't see any supply or demand zones or anything else significant on the daily. So now you go down to time frames until you're on the last high time frame, which is going to be the 1 hour, right? So let me just do that really quickly here for you guys, just so I know as well. Let's see what happened on Friday. Thursday night to then. POC is there. And that could indicate shorts coming in, I'm not gonna lie. It's hard to tell. So we do have a multitude of liquidity levels, right? And some could say even too much, but we're just seeing what we can do on each time frame, going from the higher time frames, moving down. Yeah, that's essentially what we got here, right? Price does look like it wants to continue this uptrend. Or we do have a 2 hour. It's down there. Okay. So it does seem like this area below the gap fill was essential to see and understand the volume in the recent setting. So you are keeping that in mind, right? I'm just doing step 2 right now, right? I'm doing my higher time frame analysis. Okay, so these lower liquidity levels are very essential, is what I'm seeing from our volume analysis, but essentially I have to look more on lower time frames. And this does set up for a very difficult type of market, because let's take a look at what happened in the prior week, right? And this is where we're going to be doing our fundamental integration. This is essentially where you're tying in the news to the charts, right? And you only have to keep a large emphasis on this when there's significant news that comes out. Not every piece of news is significant. Even high impact news, it does not always have to be significant. So now, let's talk about what happened last week, right? We saw Trump essentially fake out his 90-day tariffs in the beginning of the week, which we had multiple news that caused the market to go down because of the fake out and other news. Then we got Trump's confirmation on the 90-day pause, which caused the price to havoc and go up like crazy. Yearly returns in a single day is what happened there. And from there, we have essentially just retraced to the 50% point, I believe, almost. Yeah, we've retraced to our V2 levels down here, and then we saw momentum pushing price back up, right? Which does show me that price may want to continue towards the upside, but we do have to be prepared for the downside as well, right? POC was previously down at these lows, but now that he has moved up in terms of levels, I do see price potentially continuing higher. Yeah. So that was essentially our fundamental integration, and now we can dive into our medium and low time frame analysis, right? And that's when we go into the 30 minute, 45 minute, all of that. On the 30 minute, I'm not seeing too much. On the 15 minute, not too much as well. 5 minute, we did have this gap fill type deal that came up. Let's see how big these candles are. This candle's only 179 ticks. Like, these are the type of candles which I would prefer, I'm not gonna lie. Because we've been seeing 600 tick plus candles every day of last week. It's insane. But yeah, I'm not seeing much on the lower time frames, so now we can jump back onto the higher time frames and move on to step number 5, right? And step number 5 is to predict where price may go next and have different outcomes which you can capitalize on. I'll show you an example of this so you know exactly what I mean. We're essentially setting ourselves up for success in the week upcoming through setting up a type of game plan. Now, from what we have analyzed, we see that prior to this area, POC is down here, right? But if we move it up to these highs, POC is up here, right? Which on the daily chart would be above this gap fill area, right? So that means that price may continue going up to that area. And before that, we do have to break that and see rejection. And we do have to see our reaction there, right? Additionally, once we go down past to this area, look where POC is now. POC is actually down at these areas. So, it means that potentially we can tweak this liquidity. If we don't see a push from that, we can easily go down to these liquidity levels, in which we have to see further reaction, whether up or down. And this is essentially our game plan and predictions, right? We are predicting that if price goes up, breaks these two levels, we can continue to this POC area up at these highs, right? But if we see downwards movement from either of these two levels, right, and we break through this liquidity level instead of pushing up, we can see price continue down to this POC level before any reversal may happen next. And understanding this will help us understand where we can actually make a position in the market, right? Now that we have this game plan, you can potentially trade on breakouts of any of these levels or whatever your strategy is. By simply having a game plan of such sort, many strategies will be able to benefit from that, right? So now that we've done this simple pre-week analysis on ES, let's go to NQ and the VIX as well, which is the opposite index. And I'll be moving a lot faster now because I did ES pretty slowly just so you guys get a hang on to how exactly we be doing our pre-week analysis and how you guys can replicate that. So let me just do NQ real quick following the steps. We already looked at financial news. That's one thing before everything, which you have to do. And let me just do this real quick and I will come back to you guys. Okay, so I want to come back and show you what we found on the volume profile, right? Move the volume profile up to this top of this range, essentially. We do see that POC is exactly at these liquidity levels. So that shows me right away that this liquidity level is very, very, very important. Now, if we move down to this area, we see that this gap fill area is very important as well. So depending on how we react to this gap fill area, we may be able to understand whether we're going to go up or down. And let me complete the rest of my analysis really quickly. On the lower time frames on NQ, we do see a lot of volatility and choppy trending action, which nobody really prefers, right? On the 15-minute, it's essentially looking quite similar. We do have zones here, which we broke almost. That's the opening candle, so I do not like that much. And on the 5-minute, we do have similar things as well. But for overall pre-week analysis, let's take a look at our game plan for this week on NQ as well, right? And like I've showed you before, where's the volume profile before, right? I'm honestly expecting us to see if we have near these gap fill or liquid levels. So I'm expecting price to potentially come here and then make its way there and then potentially go there. We can capitalize throughout that move. Or we can see movement down here, and then see our way down to these lows as well. That's definitely not a possibility we should throw out the window. But we can capitalize on any of it. We do have POC up at these highs and POC down at these areas as well. Depending on where market expands on Monday, will definitely set the stage up for the direction which we may head towards in the upcoming week, simply just by looking on NQ and ES. Now, let's take a look on the VIX, right? And the VIX, you can do it a lot quicker, right? Because you're essentially just marking out your key levels. How it looks on VIX from the top is that we are going to continue down on the VIX, and since VIX moves the opposite, that means that we're going to move up on NQ and ES. That's simply how it looks for the time being right now. I don't even know if the volume profile works on... Yeah, it doesn't work on the VIX. But yeah, we broke towards the downside. We do have this level to watch out for right here. So I am seeing further movement down here. And then potentially something like that going on. But I'm seeing it at least head down towards this area. And then if we go anywhere else, we're going to tap into this level and head there. That is my overall idea on the VIX, which does mean that we are leaning a bit more towards the upside than the downside. Yep, short time frames match with that as well. But yeah, I hope you guys understood analysis from today, really, because it's pretty simple, really. There's 5 different steps, and as long as you follow this 5 different step routine every Sunday, or before you hop into the trading week, you can get a good gauge on how you can set your game plan up for the weekend so that your system can succeed or have a higher rate of succeeding, right? Once again, first step is to look at financial news, whether that be through Forex Factory or Financial Juice. Second step is to look on higher time frames on the chart. Third step is to integrate fundamental analysis to your chart analysis on the higher time frames. Then the fourth step is to look to medium and low time frames to see whatever you can see on those lower time frames as well, because sometimes you'll be missing some zones or levels or more depending on what your strategy is. And then finally, you want to create some predictions or set your game plan up for the week on your main tokens of analysis. And if you do that every single week, you can improve your odds of succeeding because you have a better read on the market before the week even starts. By simply integrating a pre-week analysis into your routine, which many traders do not even do, you can already be ahead of those many traders. Now, for the people who want to understand my analysis, I'm looking at what I've seen through all three of this and what I've noticed in front of you guys as well during this session. I do think that price is leaning towards the upside, especially towards this level right here. But since we have a gap fill, I think that we may head towards a gap fill, potentially sweep the gap fill and or this liquidity level, then make our way to these highs at minimum. These highs and zones is, I think that at minimum we're gonna head to those areas. But as always, you never should be married to one bias, and you should be open for multiple things to occur. That's essentially why we're creating our game plan. Now at this level, if we break towards the upside, I'm expecting to go all the way up there, but we do have to see where liquidity is placed on order flow and bookmap and all of that. That will help us analyze when we're trading live as well. Now, if that doesn't happen, we do have a plan set up for the downside, like I mentioned before as well. And this is essentially the same on NQ as well. But on VIX, we're leaning more towards the upside, but we do have a plan set up for the opposite side as well. And that's honestly essentially all I have here for this video. We discussed the 5 rules for succeeding and doing pre-week analysis. We've conducted our own pre-week analysis for V2 trading. And we set up our game plan up for a damn good trading week. So that's essentially all I have here for today. If you have any questions regarding any of the concepts we discussed today, please join the Discord. The link is in the description below. Everything is free and we have a variety of different opportunities within the server, and I highly encourage you to join. But if you don't want to do that, you can also just leave a comment down below and I'll try answering there as well. That's all I have here for today. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for a market analysis or trade recap session. Have a great day. Goodbye.